Club at today's Metro Council President debate. As we begin, we would like to offer our appreciation to our Friday Forum corporate sponsors whose generous financial support make these time-honored City Club luncheons possible. Please join me in thanking Key Private Bank, Northwest Natural, and Schwabe Williamson Wyatt. We appreciate your support. And now to introduce our debate moderator. Larry Wallach is Dean of the College of Urban and Public Affairs at Portland State University. Larry has appeared on numerous national and local news and public affairs television programs and has provided consultation to a wide range of local, state, national, and international organizations on issues related to public health, social change, and mass media. He's been a City Club member of 2004. Larry?
Thank you, Sue. It is my privilege today to moderate this debate among the candidates for the position of Metro Council President, Rex Burkholder, Tom Hughes, and Bob Stacey. This debate will have several sections. First, each candidate will give a 3-minute opening statement, and the order of presentation has been randomly selected previously. Following the opening statements, candidates will respond to questions that have been written in advance of this meeting by City Club's Friday Forum Committee and City Club staff. These are the only questions that will be asked today. There will be no questions from the floor. We will rely on our distinguished panel of City Club members seated at the table to the left of me to decide whether or not the questions have indeed been answered by the candidates. If 2 or more of these members raise their cards, let's see an example there, with the question mark on them, indicating they feel a question has not been answered, I will restate the question and ask the candidate to reply again. Now, I just asked the questions. These are the people who can demand the answers. On our panel, we have Elizabeth Friedenwald, Jennifer Rollins, and Sharon Van Sickle-Robbins. Thank you. Keeping time in our debate today are Elaine McCall and Joe Sixta. Now, for the candidates, you will see the time directly in front of you, and there will be a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. When you see the yellow light, you have 15 seconds left. When you see the red light, you are out of time. When you hear this, do not ask for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for you, and you must stop at that time. Following City Club's questions, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one question of another candidate. After this rotation of questions, each candidate will make a 2-minute closing statement. Please be respectful of the candidates, and please hold all applause until the end of the program. And now, our candidates. The City Club is pleased to welcome Tom Hughes. Tom was initially elected to office in 1976 when he won a spot on the Hillsboro City Council, a position he held for 24 years. In 2001, he was elected Mayor of Hillsboro. During his term, he served on 2 Metro Policy Advisory Committees focusing on land use and transportation. Tom won re-election to a second term in 2005 and worked during this time to recruit companies to Oregon, including SolarWorld and Intel's developmental facility. He currently serves as an appointee to the Governor's Green Jobs Council. The City Club is also pleased to welcome Bob Stacey. Bob has decades of experience in land use, planning, and transportation policy. He served for 3 years as the Executive Director for Policy and Planning at the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, focusing on light rail development in the metro region. As Chief of Staff to Congressman Earl Blumenauer, his next position, he worked with federal agencies on their environmental and community impacts. Bob's most recent position, where he served for 7 years, was as Executive Director of the land use planning nonprofit 1,000 Friends of Oregon. The City Club is also very pleased to welcome Rex Burkholder. Metro Councilor Burkholder first joined the Metro Council in 2001. He is now in his third term. He represents the Metro Council on the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation and is spearheading the update of Metro's regional transportation plan. Rex is co-chair of the Bi-State Coordinating Committee working with leaders of Southwest Washington on economic development and transportation issues. He is also a co-founder of the Bicycle Transportation Alliance, where he worked as their policy director. Now, if I can invite our candidates to please take their podiums. And we can give them a hand of applause now. We will now move to the portion of the program where I ask the questions prepared by the Friday Forum Committee and by the City Club staff. The candidates have not seen these questions in advance.
Opening statements.
Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind.
You did a great job. We could just skip that part.
Yeah, we'll just skip that part. So ignore that. I'm sorry. Mr. Hughes, please begin with your 3-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Larry. And I want to welcome you all here this afternoon. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and listen to this debate. I'd like to welcome the radio audience and also those who are watching us on cable TV. And a special thanks, as always, to the City Club for hosting this kind of an important activity. I want to talk to you a little bit today about what I think I bring to the office of Metro President and why I believe that I'm the right candidate to take Metro forward in the next 4 to 8 years. My experience as Mayor of Hillsboro, I think, has served me very well in terms of teaching me a number of things about the number one issue for this region and this state, and that's how to grow jobs. If as you know, and as was said in my introduction, we had a great deal of success in Hillsboro working with our business community out there to create a climate that allowed businesses to expand, local businesses to go from small garage-sized businesses into slightly larger businesses into big businesses, and also to recruit several larger companies into the region. When I did that, I discovered that businesses are looking basically for 5 things when they decide where they're going to locate or where they're going to expand: land supply, transportation, workforce, infrastructure investment, and the regulatory environment in a community. Of those 5 things, Metro has a great deal of impact on land supply, transportation investment, and regulatory environment. And yet, at the same time, they have always maintained that they had no responsibility for economic development. I think that that has to change. And quite frankly, the reality is you can't be the greatest place if your people don't have a job and can't afford to live here. As working with Team Oregon, going out around the world literally looking for the new green-collar jobs in the solar industry and other alternative energy opportunities, I was able to recruit companies not just for Hillsboro but for the entire region, and in fact work on recruiting them for the entire state. I'm most pleased, in fact, by a recent arrival in this area, which is Ferrotech, that has chosen to locate out in Fairview, but is a great support for the solar industry that we've tried to build in this region. As Metro President, I would take the experience that I had working with the business community in Hillsboro and expand that to working with the business community throughout the Portland metropolitan area and make this a region that can finally get down to the business of growing jobs, not just for people moving in from other parts of the country and the world, but so our children can come home from college and find places to live here in the area. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much again for being here and for listening.
Thank you. Mr. Stacey, your 3-minute opening statement.
If I may, I would like to append my own thanks to Tom's eloquent statement of thanks to the club and to you for being here today. Metro's most important responsibility is to plan for future growth in a way that strengthens and improves our quality of life, even as this region grows by 1 million more people. In today's troubled economy, we all know that quality of life begins with a job. With 11% unemployment, with 1 in 5 Oregonians seeking food assistance, every level of government and every elected official must be focused on job growth, and Metro is no exception. Metro must be an effective partner with the private sector and with local government in making the regional land supply ready for jobs. But there are voices now arguing that the pursuit of jobs requires us to abandon our long-held goals of compact, efficient growth. These voices call for moving out beyond the urban growth boundary onto the farm and forest land, and in a desperate effort to do something, anything, to support economic recovery. We know better. We don't have to become Phoenix in order to compete effectively with Phoenix. Instead of sprawling, we can put jobs in our communities, close to where people live, reducing traffic and strengthening our neighborhoods. At a time like this, Metro needs an experienced leader, one who understands both the public and private sectors, and who has a proven record of making land use and transportation work for us. I have that record built over the last 35 years. As a public interest advocate, I helped define and improve our land use planning laws, including adding the requirement that plans explicitly provide for our economic needs. As Portland Planning Director, I managed a bureau and led the city's land use policy and development review in the state's largest city. As a development lawyer, I helped clients build major employment facilities in this region. I was part of the TriMet leadership team that completed the Blue Line, started the Red Line to the airport, and laid the groundwork for the Yellow Line up Interstate Avenue. I served as a policy advisor to Governor Barbara Roberts and Chief of Staff to Congressman Blumenauer, and as director of 1,000 Friends, I led the campaign to end the threat of overdevelopment of our farm and forest lands through passage of Measure 49. I'll bring my history of coalition building and collaborative decision-making to this critical job that Metro faces, rebuilding our economy in a way that strengthens prospects for a more livable future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burkholder, your 3-minute opening statement.
Yes, well, thank you all very much for being here. It's a great day, a beautiful place to live, and I'm glad it's springtime, aren't you? Okay, great. I ride my bike every day, so these rains lately have been tough. I've been working for 30 years in this region to make it a better place to live, and that has a number of components to it. One is making sure that our children are well educated. I've been a high school science teacher. I helped start an alternative middle school in inner city Portland. I've also worked as a volunteer in the community, helping start the Coalition for a Livable Future, and then actually starting the Bicycle Transportation Alliance upstairs in my upstairs bedroom. And because I had the computer and I knew how to make a database. And that organization now is one of the most effective organizations in the state. And I received an award for being the most effective citizen advocate from 1,000 Friends of Oregon in 1998 for my work at the BTA. It also includes economic opportunity. I'm among the candidates here, I'm the only one who has had work in small companies, starting them up and helping them grow. Cloudburst Recycling, a company that I helped grow. I drove the truck, made the cold calls, worked those 60-hour weeks. So I have knowledge about how businesses start, how businesses grow, and what they need. At Metro, I'm proud to say that I've been effective in helping reform the agency to make it the most well-run agency in the state. And the outside proof is that we have the highest bond rating of any agency in the state. And the public votes for the bond measures we put out. The natural area bond measure in 2006, I helped pass. That was $227 million to buy land for permanent protection. It included $44 million that went directly to local governments to help them deal with their parks and open space issues. Also, the zoo bond measure in 2008, as the economy collapsed, the voters said, we have trust in Metro and the work that you do and how you manage your money. And they voted yes to help improve that wonderful institution we have at the zoo, the #1 paid tourist attraction in the state. I'm effective at my work because I know how to bring people together. I'm also someone who's curious and wants to see change happen and improve our lives. So a lot of the projects I have worked on at Metro have not come from me, but have come from the people in the community, from business leaders, from labor leaders, from activists coming and saying, we can do better. And I'm saying, okay, let's work together and make that happen. Funding outdoor school. We now pay for 1 day a week of outdoor school for any kid in the region who goes to outdoor school to keep that important institution alive. Climate change. I am the lead at the Metro Council on climate change after serving 2 terms on the governor's climate change advisory committees. I brought that to Metro, and we're looking at not just as a challenge, but also as an opportunity to create jobs by promoting the 350 companies that work on energy efficiency, energy conservation, and renewable energy. So that's why I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you. Now we will move to the portion of the program where I ask the questions prepared by the Friday Forum Committee and by City Club staff. The candidates have not seen these questions in advance. And I'm going to open with a single question to all 3 candidates. Each will have 60 seconds to answer. Tom Hughes will provide our first response. Mr. Hughes, why should the average person in our metropolitan region be interested in who becomes the next Metro Council president?
Well, I think that the Metro is an invisible, almost an invisible government that has an enormous amount of power and has a lot of authority over things that are very important in our lives, like the removal of solid waste, and also transportation planning, land use planning, providing the land supply. I think that every citizen in the Portland metropolitan area right now has to be concerned about where the jobs are going to come from in the future. And Metro's decisions have a great deal of impact on how this region is going to grow and how we're going to be able to grow jobs. I think, quite frankly, that over the years they have abdicated that responsibility by alleging that they have no responsibility for it. And I believe that it's time and it's important for the Metro Council and the Metro President to take a leadership role in creating those jobs.
Thank you. Mr. Stacey, why should the average person in our metropolitan region be interested in who becomes the next Metro Council president?
Well, it's clear that most citizens support the outcomes that Metro is responsible for: an urban growth boundary that aids compact development and protects farm and forest land, a solid waste and recycling system that works effectively, transportation funding for crucial projects with a modest amount of federal dollars. They don't know Metro does it. And that diminishes Metro's effectiveness and ultimately diminishes its ability and its accountability to the public. We deserve to know who Metro is and what Metro is doing, particularly when we make major decisions like the urban reserve process that was just completed, like the regional transportation plan, which says one thing and funds another, and like the important work that we need to do to make sites ready for employment within the urban growth boundary.
Thank you. Mr. Burkholder, why should the average person in our metropolitan region be interested in who becomes the next Metro Council president?
Well, I think people who care about livability, sustainability, and the economy should care about Metro and care about who provides the leadership at Metro. Because Metro is the table that the region gathers around to both answer those big challenges to livability and to sustainability and to our economy, but also to work together about answering and responding to the opportunities that we have in this region. Yes, it's a fairly unusual government, and it's a fairly quiet government, but it's a very effective one. And the work I've done in the last 9 years to make sure that we deliver on the promises we make to people, and the fact that we run our agency very effectively and very cost effectively as well, these are key things. It is their money that they should be concerned about. But again, I'd go back to, if you care about the livability of this community, Metro is the place where we have those discussions. One of the only places in the whole country that has those discussions, and the person that leads that discussion and their character and effectiveness are key issues.
Thank you.
The bell rang for me. All right.
I'm now going to ask each candidate a question which he also will have 60 seconds to answer. But first I want to provide a little background on these questions. Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington counties, along with Metro, led a regional process to identify urban and rural reserves. Urban reserves are those areas currently outside the urban growth boundary that would be given first priority for consideration expanding the boundary to accommodate our region's growth over the next 50 years. Rural reserves protect farms, forests, and natural areas and cannot be considered for addition to the boundary over the next 50 years. My first question will be to Mr. Stacey. Mr. Stacey, you've been critical of the amount of acreage adopted for urban reserves, even though 9 times that amount of land was set aside for rural reserves, and these rural reserves are off limits to growth for 50 years. The organization you once led, 1,000 Friends of Oregon, also objects to the amount of land designated as urban reserves and is considering a legal challenge. As Metro Council President, would you support the current urban and rural reserves designations, or would you hope to see the legal challenge succeed?
Larry, I would expect that the review done by the state agency will be well underway before this election is complete, and that when I take office, I will have direction from the State Land Conservation and Development Commission back to the Metro Council about how to proceed. That may provide an opportunity for reconsideration of the designation of lands and more careful attention to protecting critical agricultural areas, such as the one north of Cornelius, for which I see no reasonable basis for including it for economic development or general growth. But I would adhere to the decisions already made for the term of those decisions and not seek to undercut the decisions that have already been made.
Thank you. This question is for Mr. Burkholder. Mr. Burkholder, on February 25th of this year, the Metro Council voted to adopt a package of urban and rural reserves. At that council meeting, you expressed principal misgivings about the proposed reserves and were quoted in the Portland Tribune saying that you believe the reserve designations would not survive a legal challenge. Despite your expressed concerns, you then voted in favor of the reserve agreements. Why did you vote in favor of what you consider to be a legally flawed proposal that didn't live up to your principles?
Well, what I'd say is that there's one word I would change in the Portland Tribune description of this, is that I had concerns, and not being a lawyer, I couldn't say would they stand up or not. So the reserves process, if I could just back up real quickly, is an amazing thing. The fact that this region has had a discussion about what the next 50 years should be like. And to me, that is, I'm very proud to have been part of that, proud to have sat through 25 hours of public testimony on this very important issue. And I had concerns, and I would say, I'd probably say about 5% of the decision I had concerns about in terms of its legal standing. Of course, not being a lawyer, I can take the advice of my lawyers at Metro and what I've heard from some others outside of Metro, and so that's where that concern was there. But again, this is a legislative action that we took, and so agreeing with 95% of it, and it's the appropriate thing is let's move forward and get moving to the next challenge we have.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, this question is for you. As a government relations specialist, you testified before the Metro Reserve Steering Committee that a parcel of land near Wilsonville, owned by your former clients, the Miletus brothers, should be designated as an urban reserve. However, Metro ultimately designated this land as a rural reserve. The Miletus brothers are now in talks with the Native American Klamath tribes to have their property redesignated as federally protected tribal land, not subject to Oregon land use law. As Metro Council President, would you continue to support your former clients' efforts to pursue such development, even if it meant circumventing Oregon land use law?
Thank you. My responsibility for my employer, Tonkin Torp, ended when the process ended, and I think the process was the definitive answer in terms of what this region believes ought to happen with the Langdon Farms area. I think there is good reason to believe that adding the Langdon Farms acreage to the industrial base of the region would be an important opportunity for us in terms of businesses that we would recruit. But the region has spoken in terms of how they think that should go forward. My connection with the Milituses and with my firm's pursuit of a contract with the Klamaths ended when the process ended. I was brought on board for a very narrow scope, and I have nothing to do with the future action on behalf of my former clients.
Thank you. I will now direct questions at a single candidate who will have 60 seconds to respond, and then opposing candidates will have the option of a 45-second rebuttal. The first question goes to Mr. Stacey. Mr. Stacey, Metro is perhaps best known for land use and transportation planning. Metro also oversees well-known community assets like the Oregon Zoo and several regional parks. But the Council often does not directly address two of Oregon's broadest and most pervasive concerns, jobs and the economy. What role, if any, do you think Metro should be playing in regional and state economic development and job creation?
Let me briefly elaborate on what I said in my opening statement. Metro has an obligation to do its part to aid in the economic recovery of this region by preparing or assisting in the preparation of job sites within the urban growth boundary, not solely to answer criticism of the urban growth boundary, to make sure that we have adequate shovel-ready sites available for and adequately serviced to accommodate employment, because we want this region to recover at the same rate or better as the national economy as it picks up. That means targeting Metro's transportation dollars that it has discretion over through the budgeting process to assist in making those sites ready. That means assisting local governments with planning grants that Metro now administers to enable them to take steps to assemble sites from small parcels, to clean up brownfields, to clear gray fields, and otherwise prepare sites for employment growth.
Mr. Burkholder, you have the option of a 45-second response.
Well, I'd be happy to, because this is obviously a very critical and important issue. And what I'll talk about is my success at doing just this at Metro. And Metro, through my leadership in our regional transportation plan, has adopted 3 outcomes for the investment or transportation dollars in the region. Number 1 is economic development. Number 2 is protecting the environment. And number 3 is protecting our communities. These are not exclusive items. And there has been a result from that of more dollars than ever before going into transportation options and going into projects that help our freight mobility in the region. I've also helped bring state dollars and federal dollars to this region, including, just for an example, $75 million for the streetcar in downtown Portland, $1 million for Oregon Iron Works, and their project of the first American streetcar in 80 years.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, you have the option of a 45-second response.
Well, and thank you for that. I think that clearly it is important for Metro to take an opportunity to move forward in the economic development area. The fact that all 3 of us believe that is an indicative of how important the public feels it is. I'm the only candidate in the field that actually has had 8 years of experience serving as team leader of a team that actually has grown jobs. And presiding over the largest job growth of any part of the region. I think there's a lot of lessons that I learned as Mayor of Hillsboro that I can transport as President of Metro. I think the President of Metro needs to step forward and be the key leader in the region in terms of recruitment and retention of businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Burkholder, City Club recently released a report recommending that all excess regional bridge and highway state funds be given to Metro, which would then distribute these funds to cities and counties according to Metro's determination of their need. What are your thoughts about such a recommendation?
Having reviewed that study a couple times now, I had a presentation yesterday morning. I think the study is a fantastic analysis of the troubles that we have in terms of trying to provide services in a cost-effective way when we have political jurisdiction lines drawn in the 1850s determining where monies go. And that we are more concerned about who owns a piece of real estate than whether the public, when I'm saying that a highway, a road, even a rail line, than whether people are getting the services they need. Can we move freight? Can you get to work? Are the streets safe? At Metro, I've led the effort that parallels this, which is looking at our regional transportation plan and how can we adopt objectives and goals in there to help guide that investment. This takes us the next step and says, can we be brave enough and say, can we change from the past and make a different way of providing these services and get away from our own parochial interests? I think we can. There's a lot of areas we've done that in. Solid waste being one, that this region now has a regional solid waste effort, not each individual community.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, you have the option of a 45-second response.
I got called.
I'm sorry. our truth panel, for those listening on the radio,
Okay.
2 of our 3 panels said that Mr. Burkholder did not answer the question.
And the question is, do I support, or I'm interested, or I guess the question was...
The question
verb.
was, City Club recently released a report recommending that all excess regional bridge and highway state funds be given to Metro, which then would distribute these funds to cities and counties according to Metro's determination of their need. What are your thoughts about such a recommendation?
Okay, we'll try again here, folks. My thoughts are, again, that it's a very valuable set of recommendations. There are problems, and actually in House Bill 2001, which is the Joint Transportation or Jobs and Transportation Act of the last session, it was included in there a recommendation to do a study of regional transportation decision-making. I was the author of that clause in there. And so I'm very interested in this, and I have been pursuing it as on the statewide level as well, working with our partner agencies in other metropolitan areas. So again, it's good information and a good approach to a good question to ask.
Mr. Hughes, you have the option of a 45-second response.
Well, I think that the committee is to be commended on preparing a very lucid and valuable report, particularly describing the problem. I think that the error that they identified, the correction that they proposed, that I am most supportive of, is a change in JPAC so that it becomes more representative. I think that the problem of getting the local jurisdictions and the state government to trust Metro as the sole distributor of all transportation dollars in the region is really dependent upon how much those local governments believe that their position on JPAC, Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation, is clearly represented in a fair and equitable way. And I think at this point in time it's not. There's reform that needs to be made there.
Thank you. Mr. Stacey, you have the option of a 45-second response.
I too want to congratulate the club on a very well-written and well-researched report. The conclusions bear further study. For example, I wouldn't don't think Metro should seek to operate one single part of the transportation system, such as the bridges, because of its role as the decision maker about planning policy for the system as a whole. I think it is wise to centralize and coordinate expenditure to follow the centralized and coordinated transportation plan, but that shouldn't be a takeaway. Local governments depend upon the resources they get from the gas tax to do maintenance and operation, duties that Metro wouldn't have and that Metro probably shouldn't be planning. So I would be very cautious about how fast and how thoroughly or completely to adopt those recommendations.
Thank you. We should note that all 3 candidates congratulated the City Club. Courageous stand.
We're pretty smart people.
Mr. Hughes, Metro's largest money-generating activity comes from fees for solid waste disposal, raising some $60 million per year. However, revenue dollars will decrease as programs for recycling, yard waste, and soon kitchen waste become increasingly successful. If the amount of waste handling fees continue to decrease, what would you propose to replace the lost revenue?
Well, I think that that's the question of revenue, whether lost or future for expenditures, is more than just the elephant in the room. It's somewhat larger than that. I don't know that there's a simple answer to that. I do know that whatever is proposed to supplement the tipping fee as the major source of revenue for Metro is going to have the support of all of our regional partners. And I think that a discussion amongst them about what kind of fee or what kind of revenue source should be looked at as a way of funding future Metro operations. I think we need to be able to look people in the eye, first of all, and tell them that we're spending the money that we've got now wisely before we move towards looking for a new source of revenue. That effort has to be a regional effort.
Our clarification squad says that the question was not adequately answered. Could you take another stab at, if the amount of waste handling fees continues to decrease, what would you propose to replace lost revenue?
Well, and I think as I sort of fumbled around in the first of that question, the answer to that question is is not immediately apparent, and not apparent to me, and I don't think it's apparent to most people in the region, and it's not something that a single individual or even Metro collectively is going to be able to propose successfully. There's a number of options that have been looked at. I quite frankly voted against the construction excise tax, so I'm not in favor of taxing future growth to pay for Metro services.
Thank you. Mr. Stacey, you have the option of a 45-second rebuttal.
I would follow the principle that I would hope to apply wherever this question of revenue looms in the future, and that is that we always look for the opportunity to tax what we don't want rather than things that we do want, like property ownership and income. In this instance, taxing packaging as a means of discouraging the increase in volume or encouraging reduction in volume, and encouraging the experience that the City of Portland is taking us through with its pilot program on food waste composting are ways of making it possible to reduce the frequency of pickup, which could reduce costs. Can we find that mechanism of reducing the cost and then taxing what causes those costs in the first place as a way of hitting the sweet spot? I'd like to try.
Mr. Burkholder, you have the option of a 45-second response.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, this is a problem that we have solved already, which is a good thing to know. As part of the budget reforms that I helped put through in the early part of the 2000s, we actually decoupled garbage disposal and excise tax rates. So what we have is a system where the amount of money being produced from the garbage disposal will stay constant, and the rates will change based on the amount of garbage is out there. So this is a problem we've actually already solved, and it's an automatic reset every year. So if garbage numbers go up, rates go up a little bit. If garbage numbers go, amount of tonnage disposed goes up, then rates go down, and it maintains a constant amount of money for our general fund. And so that problem has actually been solved.
Thank you. I will now ask a question to all three candidates with no opportunity for response. Mr. Stacey, in what areas would you reduce or expand Metro's authority, and why?
I believe that Metro must undertake a new round of regional planning, a round that attempts to refine and improve the 2040 plan that we have had in existence for 15 years, and that has the focus of achieving reductions in greenhouse gases from our transportation system. That goal, imposed by the Oregon legislature, is one that we can achieve. We're well on the way because of our robust growth management and transportation planning practices, but it needs to be refined. And in so doing, I would greatly increase Metro's commitment for civic engagement and public involvement in that decision-making process in a way that Metro has not undertaken public involvement since the mid-1990s with the development of the 2040 plan in the first place.
Thank you. Mr. Burkholder, in what areas would you reduce or expand Metro's authority, and why?
The public, the voters in 1992 actually gave Metro plenty of authority to deal with the issues that we face as a region. Because what we have in the charter is the ability, with permission from the rest of the region, through a process through the Metro Policy Advisory Committee, we can take on issues of concern. And we have done that under part of my advocacy work before going to Metro at the Coalition for a Livable Future. We made housing an issue of regional concern. I think there are many issues out there, climate change being one, which is now we're working on very much as an issue of regional concern, doing a lot of work there. But also we have issues of education, energy, also other issues there, the arts and cultures. There's ways that the region can use Metro as a tool, and it's a wonderful tool, to address some really critical issues. But we have a process to do that. We don't need to have an authority. What we need to do is go and work with our partners and say, what are the issues of the day that we need to focus on and work on while we do our other important work?
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, in what areas would you reduce or expand Metro's authority, and why?
Well, I agree with Mr. Stacey that I think that the review of the 2040 plan is going to be a key opportunity to change the direction that Metro has taken up until now. Heretofore, the culture at Metro has been to look at a particular problem, an issue of regional concern, for example, whether MPAC agreed to it or not, quite frankly. And having been on MPAC for a while, there were occasions when Metro Council simply overrode an MPAC decision. But I think that there's an opportunity to look at a reduction of that regulatory process that Metro goes through, where they attempt to regulate the use of industrial land and other processes that are purely local concerns and become impediments as those local governments try to negotiate with companies trying to locate in the region I think that the 2040 plan needs revision. It needs revision in the direction of saying, let's go with education and collaboration first, regulation last.
Thank you. Another 60-second response question for each with no opportunity for others to respond. Metro's recent greenhouse gas inventory, this is for Mr. Burkholder. Metro's recent greenhouse gas inventory reported that just about 1/2 of the emissions produced in the Tri-County Portland area are associated not with transportation emissions or fossil fuels, but with what consumers buy, use, and throw away. As Metro Council President, what would you do to decrease consumption and thereby reduce greenhouse gases?
Great question. Okay, if you want to talk about new authorities for Metro, we are really getting into that territory, aren't we? The value of doing a regional greenhouse gas inventory in the way that we did it was a new way that hasn't been done much in this country, which is looking at what are the uses that we are needing greenhouse gas inventory, greenhouse gas emissions and energy, therefore. What are we using that for? And what we discovered was much of what causes our greenhouse gas, our carbon footprint, is actually our consumption of material goods. I think there's areas that we have an opportunity to address: transportation, buildings, which is the other half that we can address without affecting people's lifestyles. I think the way we address consumption is about education and working with the people to understand that connection, because I don't believe that we should go and tell people that what they can buy and not buy. That will be a matter, that's not a matter for Metro's authority, I don't believe. I think we need to address the areas that we have responsibility for and do that well.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes. Metro's recent regional greenhouse gas inventory reported that just about 1/2 of the emissions produced in the Tri-County Portland area are associated not with transportation emissions or fossil fuels, but with what consumers buy, use, and throw away. As Metro Council President, what would you do to decrease consumption and thereby reduce greenhouse gases?
Well, I think it's intriguing that that does put it in the bailiwick of something Metro has control over, which is solid waste disposal. And Metro has actually engaged in the past in efforts to promote recycling. I think that in many of the parts of the region, local governments have engaged in that also with great success. So I think that there is an opportunity for Metro to look at particularly the disposal of goods and services that are produced, but also to work with businesses at the point of sale to work on alternatives, offer incentives for alternatives to encourage people to use better judgment in terms of what they buy and therefore to have less to throw away. I think working again with the people who do packaging in this country is really a vital opportunity, and within this region, it's a good way for Metro to use its services.
Thank you. Mr. Stacey, Metro's recent regional greenhouse gas inventory reported that just about 1/2 of the emissions produced in the Tri-County Portland area are associated not with transportation emissions or fossil fuels, but with what consumers buy, use, and throw away. As Metro Council President, what would you do to decrease consumption and thereby reduce greenhouse gases?
I've already spoken to two elements of the waste stream, compostable food and food-contaminated paper and packaging that we might address through programs and through taxation in the case of packaging. If we extend that principle, we should also consider carefully, thoughtfully, and with broad public involvement, not simply the involvement of producers. endpoint programs to fund end-of-life disposal for major appliances and other consumer products that would be built into the price up front and collected as part of that purchase price. Now, that's not going to be easy. It's not going to be popular. It is one way for us, though, to start thinking about what it means when I buy a new bicycle because my existing one is worn out. I pay to make sure that the community cycle center is going to be in business to take that bicycle and rehab it and make it available for some other use. That's the way I would start to think about this problem.
Thank you. Okay, now this is something completely different, so listen closely because it's a little bit tricky. During this part of the program, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one other candidate a question. Questions must be asked in 30 seconds. The candidate to whom the question is directed will have 1 minute to respond, after which the questioner will have the option of a 30-second rebuttal. Got it? We start with Mr. Burkholder.
So just to be clear, I get to ask one of the other candidates?
Just one of the other candidates.
Okay, which one? Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Hughes. Tom, in 2004, Hillsboro and Washington County and Metro partnered on a tough call. We brought in 200 acres of land along at Shoot Evergreen on the chance that we could attract a high-tech firm there because of the services that were there. Had no guarantees. We were sued by Bob's organization for this, and yet now that's where Genentech is. Did we do the right thing?
Mr. Hughes, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, actually, thank you, Rex, for that question. As I sat out in the beautiful cafeteria at the Genentech facility on Tuesday as we had the grand opening of Genentech and actually listened to the overly complimentary comments made by the governor and the ownership of the company about my role in getting the company into Hillsboro, I think we did do the right thing, and I think we did it in a very thoughtful and unobtrusive way. Genentech is the future of the biotech cluster in this region. And I think that the most important thing about the Genentech get is they so far have used 15 acres of a 75-acre purchase, and this is not a company that is notoriously going into the land business. So they intend to bring future jobs, great creative jobs to the community. And I think to the degree that the Metro Council and the City of Hillsboro worked on bringing that land into the urban growth boundary so it could be put to that purpose, we did the right thing.
Thank you. Mr. Burkholder, you have the option of a 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I agree with Mr. Hughes that it was the right thing to bring this land into the urban growth boundary because it was a piece of property that had the special characteristics that high-tech industry is looking for. And though it was difficult and we faced opposition, we were able to make that a success. And I think that's a great example of the partnering of Metro I have been at Metro, with our local government partners. And again, I think it's the right thing to do to make those decisions to help build our economy.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, your question, 30 seconds.
And I could actually ask this of either of the candidates, but since Mr. Stacey's been left out of it so far, I'm going to ask him. As a lifelong, or most of my adult life anyway, as a teacher, I have the pleasure of having about 7,000 students scattered around the state and the country and the world, including my good friend Brad Avakian, who's sitting out at my table today, who's one of my supporters. Tell us about a teacher that inspired you while you were in school and explain why.
Mr. Stacey, 60 seconds to respond.
My sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Hughes, I'm sure there was no relation. She was, although I think her reputation was as big as yours in the far rural suburbs of Detroit, where I found myself then. My dad was in the service, was a real inspiration to me. She told me I could accomplish something. I started thinking about what I might do in my life in the sixth grade as a consequence of getting that kind of encouragement from a school teacher in what was admittedly a one-room per class school, and where there was a high level of attention paid to kids. I think every school child deserves that kind of attention, that kind of respect. that kind of effort, because I wasn't the only person by any means in that class that received that kind of attention. And my hat's off to you. I really had to struggle to get Phil Kiesling and any number of other supporters to back me because they'd had you as a teacher, Tom.
Well, who would have thought this debate was going to get so personal and heated? But Mr. Hughes, you have an option of a 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Stacey's answer, and particularly the name of your chosen teacher as must be a distant relative. But I do think that it emphasizes the fact that a lot of people who are led to public service because of the inspiration of teachers that they've had while they're in the public school system in particular, I think. And I think that that's an important element that we can't lose out of our society, or else we lose the future generations that are going to lead this country.
Thank you. Mr. Stacey, your 30-second question.
Rex, you say that you support affordable housing, but you voted against an affordable housing loan program at Metro. You say you support protecting streams and habitat, but you voted against setting baseline standards for habitat protection by regulation. You say you support transportation choices to reduce our need to drive and to reduce greenhouse gases, but you voted for a regional transportation project list in the regional transportation plan that will increase traffic and greenhouse gases 50%. Should we believe what you say or what you do?
Mr. Burkholder, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Okay. For 30 years, I have. That's a joke. Okay. No, it's supposed to be a joke. No, here's what the work that takes place in a legislative office. And that's what the Metro Council is. The Metro Council is about, and my role there is to get results. And so it is a collaborative process where we bring together representatives from throughout the region, both elected and non-elected. And we talk about the issues that we need to deal with and what we are trying to accomplish. And the idea is, how do we achieve those goals and objectives? And so the process develops a solution that is not 100% one way or the other. It's not 100% what the environmentalists would like. It's not 100% what the business community would like. It's not 100% what the labor unions want. But it is something that we can accomplish and deliver. And I believe this is where I stand on my record, is that I have delivered good, effective environmental protection through education and regulation, good choices to the people, unprecedented amounts of money going into biking, walking, and transit, and other successes in that area through a collaborative approach.
Thank you. Mr. Stacey, you have the option of a 30-second rebuttal.
Over the last 35 years, I've learned that leadership isn't about saying one thing and doing another. That leads to public cynicism about government. The voters expect and deserve elected leaders who base their decisions on their values and on the facts, and leaders who tell the truth every time we talk to the voters.
Okay, we will now move to the final portion of the program, 2-minute closing statements from each candidate. We will begin this with Mr. Burkholder.
Great. Well, thank you again for coming today. I stand before you as the candidate who has the experience of running a $400 million plus operation for the last 9 years and of delivering results on some very key issues of concern to this region: economic development, environmental protection, and enhancing our communities. The facts that I have brought to this region: millions of dollars in transportation spending. And let me just tell you one story. ODOT received its stimulus check, $227 million for the state. This region was slated to receive 11% of ODOT's investment. I personally went to Salem and got into a fairly heated argument with the Deputy Director of the Department of Transportation, arguing that this region, with its 100,000 people unemployed, deserved more of those dollars. I was able to double the amount of money spent by ODOT on stimulus projects in this region by my personal advocacy. This is the kind of leadership this region needs, is a person who will go to bat for you. And I have done that for 30 years, 9 years at Metro. Metro today is the best-run agency in the state because of my work to make sure our budget is balanced, understandable, and focused on results. We have the most vaunted quality of life in this country because of the work I've done at Metro to get more dollars than ever before spent on alternative transportation, biking, walking, and yes, transit. 3 light rail lines have been completed during my time at Metro. Oregon Iron Works is now employing hundreds of people, building, among other things, the first streetcar made in America. And they are selling that to Tucson and to Washington, D.C., and they have orders coming on other areas. Why? Because we took a risk with them and said, can we bring you money? And we brought them $1 million to create the first American prototype. This is the leadership this region needs, and I would ask for your votes.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, your 2-minute closing statement.
Thank you, and again, thank you for your attentiveness here in the hall today and for the radio audience at home. I agree with Rex, quite frankly, and that is that this election is about experience. Who brings the experience to the job of president of Metro that can resolve or move towards resolution of the #1 problem in this region, and that's how to restore the 52,000 jobs that we lost in the last 2 years, and to grow more jobs in this region so that our children will be able to come back home and know that they can have a job and an affordable place to live. I think that that's the message that we need to deliver to Metro, and I think I'm the person to deliver that. 8 years of service in Hillsboro, learning how to work with the business community, learning the intricacies of how businesses make decisions about where they're going to locate, when they're going to expand, what is it that they need in order to become prosperous. Governments don't create jobs. Even federal government jobs, even stimulus money jobs, are short-term and they go away when the money goes away. The best jobs for our community are good family jobs that pay a good wage and benefits, that are going to be located in companies that are in the private sector, where the job depends upon profitability. And so every agency in this region and in the state, for that matter, and every leader, elected and otherwise, has to make their top priority finding a way to create jobs in this community. We're all going to say that. We've all read the polls. We all know that that's what the public wants. I'm the one that's done it for 8 years, and you can measure the success if you look at what's happened in Hillsboro. We can make that happen around the region. We can turn around the perception that this is a terrible place to do business and convince people once again that this is a great place to do business, and then the quality of life that we're talking about building will have an impact because we'll all have work.
Thank you. Mr. Stacey, your closing statement.
Well, shockingly, I'm going to talk about experience as well. I'm the only candidate in this race with actual management experience running an agency that does many of the jobs that Metro is responsible for. I'm the only candidate with private sector experience actually helping develop sites and buildings for jobs. I have 3 decades experience with collaboration and coalition building, and I have the understanding of our long-term livability goals and the confidence in those goals that will enable me to lead us through this difficult economic crisis in a way that achieves those goals. And over the course of my career, in public and private service, I've earned a reputation as someone who says what he means and does what he says. I'll work openly and cooperatively to strengthen our towns and neighborhoods while protecting our farms, forests, air, and water. That's why I've earned the sole endorsement of the Oregon League of Conservation Voters and the Sierra Club, and the support of trusted leaders, such as former governors Vic Atiyeh, Barbara Roberts, and John Kitzhaber, and Congressman Earl Blumenauer, along with many leaders of local government, business, and this community. I ask for your support as well, and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now back to Sue Thomas, City Club President.
As we conclude, I'd like to thank our Truth Squad members, Sharon Vensicle Robbins, Jennifer Rollins, and Elizabeth Friedenwald. Thank you also to our timekeepers, Joe Sixta and Elaine McCall. A special thanks to our moderator, Larry Wallach, and of course, our greatest appreciation for our debaters, Rex Burkholder, Tom Hughes, and Bob Stacey. Please join us next week for the Republican gubernatorial debate. We are adjourned. Thank you.